Another day, another sweatshirt, and another chapter of the social arc. I'm going to be reading chapter 2 today, which is learning one's first language. A child is a strange thing, said Cassius. It is a natural thing, said his wife. That is why it strikes a civilized person as strange. It's a quote from Ivy Compton Burnett. When we say that someone has learned a language, what has happened to that person? What has that individual done, and what has been done to him or her? What has been learned, and at what point can we say that the process is complete? What part do imitation and practice play in the learning process, and what is the contribution of the environment? What is the importance of intelligence in language learning? Is there an age at which it is easier to learn a language, and if so, what is that age? Is there a difference between learning one's first language and learning a second one? Why does anyone learn a language? Questions such as these are critical for anyone interested in language development. In the first place, it is obvious that children do not create language totally anew, nor do they learn language like a parrot by memorizing complete utterances, though in the early stages they may do a little of both. More often, children's early utterances bear a clear relationship to utterances in the adult language, while differing enough to show that they are not straightforward imitations, as can be seen in the following examples. Salt all shut. Sleepy bed. Wear a mitten no. I didn't did it. Was a snake. Her got hurt in the face. Anybody isn't here. Why Kitty can't stand up. It is extremely unlikely that the children who produced these remarks were repeating accurately something an adult had said. In fact, even when children are asked to repeat something exactly, they will often make changes by omitting words or parts of words, and sometimes they will change the order of the words. The kinds of changes that children make depend upon the stage they have reached in their language development. Similarly, the length and complexity of the utterances that the children produce depend upon their stage of development. All children begin with one-word utterances, go on to two-word utterances, and gradually, as their language develops, they are able to produce and understand longer and more complex constructions. Moreover, the manner in which children's language development is not haphazard, but systematic and, to a certain degree, predictable, although there is considerable variation among children. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of children's language development is that it follows a coherent pattern, even though at times the forms are very different from those in the adult language. In fact, it is curious that children are usually satisfied with a rough approximation to what an adult would say, and do not try to perfect any single utterance before moving on to the next. One might expect children to practice a few phrases until they could say them as well as most adults, and then move to mastery of a few more phrases. But it is fairly obvious why this does not happen. If children concentrated only on a few utterances, they would be limited in the topics they could talk about. As it is, parents soon become fairly expert in interpreting what it is their child has said, though they may not always get it right. Children do differ, however, in the accuracy with which they produce the sounds of the language they are learning. Some children seem happy with very rough approximations to the sounds of the adult language, whereas others come much closer to the adult model. There is another more fundamental reason why children do not practice imitating adult utterances. If all they learned to do was imitate what had already been said, they would never become fluent speakers of the language. As adults, we do not have a set of ready-made utterances like a foreign language phrase book from which to choose when we speak. Instead, we have the ability to produce and understand utterances that we have never heard before. For example, to illustrate this point, I once produced the following sentence. Karl Marx was playing bridge with Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, and Mary Queen of Scots when Tarzan walked in. I assumed that none of my readers had ever encountered this particular sentence before, but I also knew that everyone who speaks English would be able to understand it. The ability to produce and understand utterances we have never heard before is sometimes referred to as linguistic competence. One way of looking at linguistic competence is to think of it as a set of rules. Language is the prime example of human behavior that is both rule-governed and, at the same time, infinitely adaptable to new situations. What does it mean to say that language is rule-governed? Simply that it is systematic. Two simple examples may help to illustrate this point. Suppose someone reads out the following list of numbers to a group of people and asks them to repeat them after a short pause. Here are the numbers: 248163264128256, 39278124372921887, 41664256102440961638. Most people would probably not get much further than the 6th or 7th digit in each case, but one woman gets all three sequences right. Does this mean that she has a better memory than the others? Possibly, but there is another, more plausible explanation, and that is that she has grasped the secret of each sequence. This becomes more apparent if the figures are displayed like this: 2, 4, 6, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 3, 9, 27, 81, 243, 729, 2001, 4, 16, 64, 256, 1024, 4096, 16,384. In each case of these sequences, if digits are produced by multiplying the first number of itself and then multiplying the answer by the original number and so on. Once the principle of organization is grasped, it would be possible to recognize and repeat even longer sequences of digits. Similarly, we are likely to find an utterance in an unfamiliar language difficult to repeat because we do not know the system by which it is organized. The second example illustrates the creative nature of linguistic competence. The rules of the simple language device are very simple. Choose one item from column A and combine it with one item from each of the following columns, and you will automatically produce an English sentence, provided that the order A to F is maintained. With a total of only 80 words, the simple language device has the capacity to produce 531,441 sentences. Enough for 5 books as long as this one. Of course, not all of the sentences will be very plausible, but that does not make them ungrammatical. The simple language device has only a small number of words and one very simple rule for combining them into sentences. As adult speakers, we have a much larger number of words and quite a few rules for combining them into acceptable utterances. It is easy to see how immense the creative capacity for a language is. If the simple language device can produce over 500,000 sentences, it is not surprising that the capacity of our linguistic competence is infinitely vast. We can begin to grasp some of the complexity of this system by considering what confronts infants as they begin the long task of becoming fluent speakers of the language spoken by those around them. The next 8 chapters will be devoted to various aspects of this task. First, however, it is necessary to emphasize that as adults, we can offer infants limited assistance in this task, however well-meaning we may be. I'm going to kind of say some of these words down here. So, carefully, a great many hairy students skipped up the street. And you can just do that. You can just choose bing, 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 and then create a sentence. Anyways, obviously, we cannot use language to give explanations to a child who does not know the language. More important, we do not know what will be most useful to the child at a particular stage of development. Although researchers have discovered a great deal about the stages that children go through in their language development, we still have no clear understanding of how children find out what they need to know, and they are also incapable of telling us. This does not mean that how adults behave around children does not affect what happens, but it is not the only factor. Children are very actively engaged in developing fluency in a language, and they succeed under a very wide range of different conditions. It seems to be as natural for children to speak as it is for birds to learn to sing. The end.